All right, I trust that everyone is back. It's 18:20. Recording has started again. So we are now, thumbs up please, so that I can see that everyone or majority of you are back so we can continue. Eureka?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so what we're looking at now is after the assignment, we now have Unit 5. So Unit 5 is um, we went through the proposal stage and how to draft and craft and present the work in a proposal setting, the templates that we need to use, and so on. Unit 5 now takes you as a supervisor what you need to guide the student on building up until their examination process. And much like I explained to you, what needs to be done, and then when you get feedback from the examiners, how do you handle that feedback? So this is not a very long section, but I also don't want to rush it because, like I said, I want to see you next week so we can do some revision and tackle all the other assessments, the assignments that you have, including how you need to present your final submission. All right. Um, so this basically looks at the lifespan of the researcher or the student throughout their research journey, right? And we read everything there was to know about academic literacies, what should be included, what should not be included, ways to improve, and so on. We spoke about having or working in groups and encouraging participation, first of all. And this is having writing groups, which we just discussed in 4.4, where you could even have the doctoral students come in and assist the master students because obviously their knowledge is a bit more advanced than the master student on the processes and how to deal with their research journey and how to write. So writing groups is very important. It's much like how I took you through this semester with working in groups and helping each other. Same process, because now you are coming after you've done, or the student has done all the chapters, you now done your analysis of results, your final write-up, you have a draft, a full draft of your entire project. And you need to know that, are we ready? Supervisor and student, are we ready now to submit for exams? Because you don't just submit, you still have to go through a first draft, have it reviewed by your supervisor or peers. Then it goes through a final draft, or maybe it goes through a second draft, then a final draft of review. And then it goes for editing because it needs to be have language and technical editing before it gets sent to an examiner. Also, before it gets sent to an examiner, there's a process that is called nomination of assessors where you choose subject experts to mark this work, all right, in that particular discipline. So it's participating in these groups, preparing yourself. And what we also do is when the student is on a final write-up, so the first oral presentation was a defense of the proposal in a colloquium setting, and we have a lot of advisors. We can also do the same, or we have done the same from my personal experience, is we have a final defense, which is once all the work has been done and you have a full draft, then you present the findings of your work to see whether it aligns with your objectives, your research questions, and so on. And again, you get feedback on that, right? And it tells you where to improve. Because remember, all this is before it actually gets submitted for exam. So you're improving on it before it goes to the examiner. The type of support that you are providing to your students along the way as well, because when you have these writing groups and you have them assisting each other, you have more senior, the PhD students or the postdoctoral students helping the master students in those writing groups. They formed support groups, emotional support, because they're all going on the same journey. They all go through more or less the same obstacles, and they're experiencing the same feelings, and so they can all relate and they can talk to each other about that. So these groups are quite helpful. The first activity that we're looking at, 5.1, reading and thinking about the value of peer writing groups. So Do you think it's effective? We did speak about this, right? And then it says, while you're reading the excerpt, account of one of the peer writing groups in this study, and the second extract of the account of peer writing groups at work. Note the similarities and differences in that excerpt, and think about which of the activities described could be useful for your postgraduate students in your particular discipline. Because remember, not all these methods is used for a specific discipline. It like Tony was mentioning, um, that ethical clearance and so on, that process does not fall under his discipline. So he wouldn't have to deal with such issues, right? Consider what others could be added and also your possible role in such a group. Write a paragraph about your thoughts on these prompts. So quickly, let's just look at opening up the floor. What do you think about writing groups? Have you used it? Will you start using it? Is it something that if you were a student, would have benefited from if you didn't have that? Do you think students would benefit from it now? Eureka, we have 20 master students. They fall in different facets of education. All of them live in mostly rural. Group work is therefore very difficult. So not even virtual groups, Eureka? Or do they not have maybe data, or because you're saying it's rural areas?
It sounds a bit backward, but we've got some amazing students, but many of our areas surrounding,
Resources. Yeah.
we just don't have Wi-Fi. I mean,
Yeah, the
at our
resources.
university, we are often, like for the last 2 days, we've been stranded without Wi-Fi, internet because of mainline issues. So most of our master students are teachers. So the
Okay, yeah.
only time they have access is actually during the school day, where they can use the school's Wi-Fi, which is often there. But
Yeah.
really, the group work has not been very successful due to that.
Yeah, it depends. It won't work for all disciplines. It may not work for all disciplines, but it also may not work for different infrastructures because, like you said, if they don't have the Wi-Fi, you can't have virtual sessions. They come from different facets of education. Also, rural areas, getting them together in groups on campus may also be a bit of a problem. Tony?
Prof, I find that the groups, well, I do have a writing group at on campus, and it works very well. I have to say that with the students that I have, they generally are working in the similar kind of field because I mean I'm supervising them, so they are in the area of my specialization, and it allows them to, number one, speak across each other, across the board, and understand the kind of conceptual framework in a bit more depth. But I can also track quite easily the progress of students. So what we'll do is like every Friday, like tomorrow, we meet at 8 o'clock and we sit and we set goals for the day. So
Yeah.
whether it's writing 1,000 words or reading 2 articles or whatever it is, but we set goals and we try keep track of the goals. So when we take a break, we check in, see how far everyone is, and it works very well in contrast to just like letting the students go on their own.
On their own,
Um,
yes.
yeah, because the feedback is immediate. It's almost synchronistic, and it's also a space in which they can experiment with ideas. So,
Yes.
because they have other people who are working in the same space, they can throw things around and have other people give feedback.
Yeah. And because it's a similar discipline, right? Different from what Eureka is experiencing. Because it's a similar discipline, like in my field, working in those groups, they also look at, I'm not saying the emotional support, but from an academic and research perspective, they can also see the obstacles that they're experiencing are the same as the others in that group, you know? So once it becomes relatable, kind of like eases the student into like, okay, it's the journey is not so difficult because there are others experiencing it, but this is how we need to move forward and deal with it if we want the qualification, you know. So those are the measures that they have to put in place. Group work in undergraduates very well because of all students living on. Yeah, that works. Postgraduate is a bit of a problem. Even with my honors students, I do online classes. I'm trying to get them in for at least one session every 3 months per term for contact, so I'd at least get to interact with the students and see them. But it's very difficult with them working and not being on campus, and also the Doornfontein campus, not the best campus area to be in. The campus is safe inside. Outside in CBD is not as safe. Students don't want to come to campus. That's why we went fully online, but at least 20% contact sessions. So students don't want to come to campus. I have that issue with my students as well. Even my master students, everything they want to do is online. And since COVID, I haven't even met some of my students. I only met them on the day of graduation. Some of them even had virtual graduation, so I've never really met them in person. So yeah, it will work if students are physically on campus, like the undergrads, it works very well. But a lot of the research work is done at postgrad level, and that's where we need the students and we need them to participate. And also, but like I said, it's not cast in stone. They're not forced to join. We set up the groups, and if you're interested, you will join. If you're not, then you miss out on some of the stuff, but then you still continue with the work with the guidance of your supervisors. All right, so 5.1 is to touch on your thoughts about students and working in groups, and how do they support each other and help each other, right? So supporting this research process continued. You also have a doctoral writing group, which I just mentioned now, all part of the same faculty, same discipline. You have similar interests. You can help each other with the styles in which you read and write and so on. So it's set up for academics, it's set up for postdocs, it's set up for any researcher. So I have a research group, and let's call it my research team, because my research team helped me convert projects in master's projects and honors projects and so on into publishable papers, publishable work, right? So I have about 16 members. We've been working since 2015, I think. Some of the members will leave, new members will come in, but I don't go more than 6 members in a group because it's too many to have on one project, 6 authors, right? So we keep it to about 2 or 3 authors, and then they work on specific projects and stuff. That has worked well. So what we do as well is you have specific writing groups, writing sessions for a master's level, for doctoral level. The reason why they have the doctoral writing group for academics, and why the faculty sets it up, or a department can also set it up, or the university, is because if you want to remain in academia, those of us that are sitting here want to obviously remain in academia. That is why you're doing a postgraduate diploma in research supervision. You want to continue as an academic, but your highest qualification that you need to obtain is a PhD. And that doesn't stop there, because once you have your PhD, then you go for senior lecturer, associate professor, full professor, and so on, right? The journey does not end. So that is why having these writing groups, because some of us as academics now, from an academic standpoint, as much as the students lag behind, we as well been in that position where we also lag behind in our own studies, because it's a lot to balance work and life, home, everything, and then still study on top of that. It's a lot to balance. So this is where those groups are actually put out there, so that it assists, whether it's an academic, a researcher, student, on how to navigate that journey, that research journey. Having multidisciplinary writing circles. So this is where you have more than one discipline within the writing circle, and you're going to have subject experts for specific disciplines. So you also have people within that group or writing circle, because you're going to start writing about your research and presenting your work. They will guide you on the specific niche areas and subject content for your particular discipline. So they come and they present. They maybe do formal presentations, or you just have an open discussion. So this is subject specific. It's not just guiding you on how to write, the structure you're supposed to use, but looking at the actual content and the meat that goes, what we call the meat and the flesh that goes into those paragraphs and those sections. All right. Then you've got formal writing groups and so on. Sharing the reading load. I actually tried this as a practice where you have specific deadlines, tight time frames, and the university wants A, B, C, D done in a specific time, but we don't have enough time to read all the work that is put out there. And then remember, there was also a section where we looked at last week where the supervisor loads you also with additional reading that's going to help your work, your research, your content, bulk up your content. It's a lot to read, but sharing the reading load and what you would extract, for example, right? So we've got Victoria and we've got Rizamati, right? So Rizamati has a certain way of reading and extracting information. Victoria's got her own style of reading and extracting information. So if they were to help each other with the discourse and gathering information, is that going to work? Will you be able to, like, will Rizamati be able to read what Victoria is extracting, and will Victoria be able to read what Rizamati is extracting on the same content? It may work, it may not work for some people, but you have reading and writing groups. It just what works for a particular individual at that time and how they can handle their skills and abilities when you have reading groups. So sharing of workload. So I will read information, I'll summarize for you, and I'll help you, and I'll give it to you. And then in turn, we do the same. Constructing and adhering to a writing schedule. This is important. And generally, when we have in the proposal stage, you have a Gantt chart or a flow chart of the activities that you want to conduct throughout your research journey and how long and the time frames for each of those activities. So you set yourself goals and activities and you put timelines to it. The reason why you need to have a research schedule is so that you know there's a limited time for completion of your studies, and we don't want to exceed the time that we are registered for, or else you get exclusions, academic exclusions if you overstay your welcome basically at the university. So if a master's program is 2 years and you're sitting in the system for 5 years, not acceptable. You're basically taking up the space, and I was told this, you are taking up the space of someone that can finish a qualification in 2 years, right? So that is why you've got to give them, and they need to have reasonable schedules. That is why it's better that even though you give them some deadlines, these are the dates, but also be flexible enough for them because of their work schedules and stuff. Be flexible with their own schedule, draw it up together, come to a compromise as to this is the dates and the submission dates and schedules that we're looking at, that A, B, C, D needs to be done. It needs to be fair, it needs to be reasonable, and something that can be obtained by the student, enabling them to finish the qualification in that 2-year period, if it's a master's, or 4-year period if it is a PhD. Generally on the writing schedule or a working schedule, I call it a project plan. I tell the student work backwards. You know the date that you registered, and 2 years added to that, when you're supposed to end, right? At a give or take about a month or so. Now work backwards from that date to the date that you submitted your proposal, and then give yourself these timelines. So that's how I draw up schedules or work plans for my students. Any questions up until this point? Anyone? Not seeing any hands up. I'm not seeing any thumbs up. So it's basically just guiding the student on what needs to be done with their journey, planning out, assessing this entire project. No questions. Okay, so from constructing and adhering to a writing schedule or project plan, we then move on to where I want to stop today, which is developing time awareness and time usage priorities. So that is why it says it's important for us to have a schedule. It gives you a good guideline because time is artificial construct and anything can come up. There's a lot of obstacles that may come up. There may be setbacks. Anything may come up. So as much as you draw up the schedule and you give yourself timelines and goals for each activity or each step on this research journey, if something comes up, it means that you have to rework that schedule now. You have to look at prioritizing which is the most important task that you have to complete, right? And being aware of how crucial time is in order to complete the qualification. Because if you can't, then you have to apply for an extension of the study. I think they allow you 6 months, 6 to 9 months on an extension of your studies, just to complete it. So there are avenues. It's just how you manage. So time management, what we've done as well is um, one of the practices is we bring in the Academic Development Center to do a session. So it's a workshop or a seminar on time management. And it has really helped because, like we said, it's difficult to balance studying, working, home life. You have to have proper time management skills, and it assists with navigating throughout this entire journey. All right, any questions up until this point before I conclude? And then we'll catch up on Thursday and finish off everything that needs to be finished with Unit 5 and all the assignments and assessments. Yes, Tony.
Not so much a question, but more of a comment, Prof. Going back to the issue of writing groups and having students come into campus physically, I find that a lot of the students that experienced the COVID study period are missing some fundamental skills.
Yeah,
And those fundamental skills can be related to social skills too. And when we neglect that social development, it can hamper their like academic development at the same time. So it is very important to sometimes at least have that space available, even if you're not going to force students to make use of it, but have a place in which they can get a social aspect to what they're doing.
absolutely. Keep it as an
Um,
open platform. Yes.
Yes. Yes, it was just a comment related to that I find that because of the COVID period, some of them are missing very fundamental social skills, which we then fulfill with these writing groups and
Yes.
spaces like that.
No, most definitely. I also found that. I found that with the COVID, and also they became too complacent in that everything was online, staying online, but that fundamental, those social skills of interacting with somebody, even though it was online, I still preferred have at least one contact session where you meet your peers in class and you can share ideas and so on, especially like with these assignments. Even if it's on a weekend, if you're meeting in person on campus doing your assignments, but that social aspect of it is definitely missing. Those kids that I'm talking about the schools now that had to go online during COVID when we were on lockdown, let me tell you, their social skills are so bad. My kids are, my son is part of that. They lack that social skills because they lost it. They weren't around their peers or their friends during that time where they used to even have, homework groups. You sit and you do your homework together, whether you have a free period in at school or after school, for half an hour, whatever the case is. And they lost touch of that. They lost touch of their friends. And it's even now, if they visit and they're all together, they can't converse with each other physically. They actually chat to each other on the phone while sitting next to each other. So yeah, it's very concerning, but I think it's also imperative. These are the things that are lacking and need to be brought back because you cannot, yes, COVID put us in a state of a pandemic. It didn't mean that it became the new norm. we have to revert back, and especially being a comprehensive university, a traditional university, governed by contact sessions, you have to revert back to that, because a lot of students will apply for our programs thinking it's online, and yes, we want to, but then the catch is we're doing assessments contact, so we catch you there. You have to still come to campus whether you like it or not, because you still need to do your assessment online, and I make sure it's done in the labs. Yeah, so very, very important to learn those social skills, and they learn it through these writing groups, or even just doing these working groups among yourselves. It really helps. Okay, any other questions, any other comments before we call it a night? Thumbs up, you good?
Prof, just one question from my end.
No
I'm a
problem.
bit behind on the assignments. When are they ideally all due?
Lorenzo, if you can just give me, I need to open this. We will post it up. I'll give you a tentative date. I think it's the 2nd of October, if I'm not mistaken, for all of those assignments. I'll give it to you now. All assignments due 26th of September, sorry. Midnight on the 26th of September.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Because remember, you have the oral presentation of your final exam and then the submission of that final exam afterwards.
Okay.
But
cool.
your dates will be posted on Moodle if it's not already posted. I think it's already posted. Just keep checking your communication in Moodle.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Prof.
All right, so you can keep working in those groups until the 26th, because if you've already done your assignments and uploaded, it's not a problem. But the last date for everything to be submitted must not exceed the 26th of September.
Sorry, Prof. I just wanted to ask, I noticed with some of the submissions that it will flag when you have made a submission already. Do we have only one submission attempt with the assessments, or are we allowed to maybe, like I say, if I've
It
submitted
should
already?
be up to 2,
Okay.
Lorenzo. If you're still there, if you can please do an edit on the submission link to either 2 or 3 attempts. It allows you 2 or 3 attempts, because I know sometimes, and this happens with my students, is that on the first attempt they may just upload the wrong document, or they want to still put something in, and then yeah, so you're allowed a second attempt. So it allows more than 1 attempt, but don't go more than 3.
No problem, Prof. I'll change the settings now.
Yeah, just change the settings. So I think it's 2 attempts.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Prof,
Yes, Victoria.
thank you so much for tonight's